Hi and welcome to yet another build showcase that I'm doing for the current 3.29 All Flame League. This time around I tried using Frostblades as my main skill, but instead of doing a normal build with a Warden or with a Slayer for example, I'm using a Hierophant that is using mana as an offensive as well as a defensive layer. As in all my build showcases, the disclaimer before the video, this is not a build guide, it's just to show and to showcase what I did this league, especially with the interaction of the mana scaling that I did for my Frostblades, which maybe could be also used for other skills. For the budget that I had to use for this build, you could do way stronger builds. I had to use like 500 to 600 divines, but as always I'm trying to do something off meta and still clear the whole game and do all the challenges, so I had to use a lot more currency than other meta builds would have needed for this. So how does my iteration of Frostblades work? I'm trying to get a lot of added lightning damage, and then I'm converting all the added damage that I'm getting from various pieces to cold damage via the Breach Bloodline Ascendancy. That says I gain added cold instead of lightning and fire damage if my dexterity is my highest attribute. And why am I using Hierophant instead of the other classes for this? I'm using the Mana Storm Shield. It's a shield that gives me the buff when you cast a spell, sacrifice all mana to gain added maximum lightning damage equal to 59% of sacrificed mana for 4 seconds. So this is a really strong buff. It gives me that much added lightning damage that I'm jumping from 20 mil without the buff to 80 mil with the buff. Then after the added damage I'm just scaling my Frostblades with cold penetration. I have a pretty strong tincture and also attack speed and all the standard stuff on the tree. To be able to use a tincture in this build, which is a lot of damage and I didn't want to miss that, I had to do a switch to go on a really low life pool, and I'm also reserving a lot of auras with my life instead of mana. So I can use Bloodsoaked Blade, the keystone, to drain my life instead of my mana with the tincture, because the problem is with the Mana Storm Shield that if you use a skill you drop down to 0 mana and the tincture would automatically be deactivated. I could activate the tincture after I use the buff, or activate the buff of the shield, but that's a really clunky playstyle and I thought this would be a way better iteration of this. With the huge amount of leech that I have in this build, with the claws as well as the tree, I'm able to maintain my mana pool and fill it up in an instant after I've used the skill to trigger my Mana Storm Shield. But I'm also able to maintain the tincture for a really long time, especially if I'm actively leeching. Then let's go over the items that I used in this build. The heart of the build, as I said, is the Mana Storm Lacewood Spirit Shield. With the volatile Val Orb I managed to get a roll of 59% of sacrificed mana as added maximum lightning damage instead of the usual 50%. I'm also of course using a Mage Blood. As I said, this build isn't really budget friendly, but it makes the gearing that much easier. In conjunction with the belt I'm using a Quartz Flask for spell suppression, phasing and evasion rating, a Jade Flask with additional elemental resistances, a Silver Flask with curse immunity, and then a Stibnite Flask to get to 95% evasion as well as an additional critical strike chance. As a tincture I'm using a Prismatic Tincture for the increased elemental damage with melee weapons, and instead of the elemental penetration I'm using weapon attack speed, which synergizes with my build a lot better than the penetration. For body armor I'm using the Ivory Tower. It's really important because I have really low life pool, and this way I'm able to negate most of the chaos damage and together with some other chaos resistance I have on my gear, because I can spend my mana to negate the chaos damage and I'm nearly always full on my mana because of the leech. The only dangerous overlap is when I used a spell to trigger my shield. I'm currently on 0 mana. I need to leech something, and in this moment I get a chaos hit. This is one of the main things that I'm dying but it's still manageable for softcore. Other than that, I got a really nice double corrupt implicit for 3 additional levels for my frostblades, and the rest of the stats is also pretty good because I'm reserving some life. I get an additional maximum energy shield, as well as the regeneration of the energy shield per second is pretty good if there's a situation where you're not able to leech. The weapon is really standard, it's just an Imperial Claw with the usual damage mods on it, as well as the maximum mana mod. For the gloves, they're also pretty standard. They have the typical mods on it. They have the implicits for the non-wild strike skills target 2 additional nearby enemies, which is huge for clearing, as well as the projectile pierce an additional target. My boots are also really standard. The most important thing is the chance to avoid elemental ailments. Together with an ancestral vision, I'm getting to 100% chance to avoid elemental ailments. For the ring that I'm copying with Calandra's Touch, I got one that I crafted myself. I used the manifold ring and I had to somehow get the increased maximum mana mod from Delph to recombinate on the manifold ring, which was really hard to do, especially with the following fracturing of this mod. After that I just spammed the crit multi essence on it until I got maximum energy shield and a lot of mana, and then I crafted on Wedge. For my amulet I used an incursion base with the percent increased maximum mana mod on it. I fractured this one, and I also used the new ducats from this league to get the 5% penetration cold resistance as an implicit. After that I used essences to get tier 1 wet. I have global critical strike chance, a tier 1 resistance, as well as a tier 2 lightning damage to attacks. On the anoint I allocated Whispers of Doom to be able to use Frostbite as well as my Assassin's Mark. I'm also using a lot of jewels in my build. The first one is a rare jewel with crit multi, maximum mana and all elemental resistances. The second one is a healthy mind with 19% roll in the shown location. Then I'm using a lethal pride, which is really good. It fixes my strength, as well as gives me intimidate on hit, and most importantly it has 2 nodes with gain 1 rage on melee hit, so this way I'm able to be rage capped at 30. One jewel that is really cool for my build is the Foulborn, the Green Dream. First of all, it's really inexpensive, so I'm able to do a Corrupted Blood implicit on this. But most importantly, it has the mod cold damage with hits is lucky if you suppressed spell damage recently. I'm at 100% spell damage suppression, so this triggers relatively consistently for spells. And because I'm converging a lot of added lightning damage, which has a big range, to cold damage with my Bloodline Ascendancy, the mod has a really big value for me. I'm also using a Foulborn Ancestral Vision with 10% chance to suppress spell damage, and as I said with my boots, I'm at 100% avoid elemental ailments. Lastly, I was able to shoot a really nice Watcher's Eye. It gives me the flat 8% chance to evade attacks while affected by grace. This is really big because in the high end it takes big amounts of evasion to be able to get to the evasion cap, and this is just flat 8% on top of it. After this I have 10% of maximum mana as extra maximum energy shield as while affected by clarity, which I have on level 1, and then the last 14% chance to suppress spell damage while affected by grace. Let's go over the skills real quick. I'm using Frostblade supported by Volatility, elemental damage with attacks, greater multi-strike, bone chill and fortify. I could use another higher damage support gem instead of fortify, but I think the extra defensive layer is really nice to have. I'm using Assassin's Mark, we're supported by Mark on hit. I also have Blood Rage and Berserk. For movement, I'm using Frostblink, which is also the main ability that I'm triggering my shield with. I have shield charge and faster attack. I'm using Frostbite as an additional curse together with Curse Ground depending on the encounter. Because I'm not reserving any other auras by mana, I'm able to use an Eternal Blessing support with my Grace aura. I have an Arcane Cloak supported by Moderation and Automation. And lastly, I'm using an Arrogance to reserve life for my level 1 Clarity, for my Watcher's Eye, the Herald of Ice just for the clear, and lastly for Precision Aura. Let's go over the tree. I'm using, for the Ascendancy nodes, I'm using Conviction of Power for the Endurance charges and Power charges. I'm using Divine Guidance, of course, and Sanctuary of Thought, which is also really nice for the area of effect for my clear. And most importantly, I'm using the Breach Ascendancy for Cryogenesis, so I get added cold damage instead of added lightning and fire damage for my Frostblades. I'm using Mind Over Matter for defensive layer, and this point is my rare jewel. Just path nodes for mana and energy shield. And this point I have my healthy mind to convert all those life into mana. Then I'm passing over to the claw nodes. I'm using Ghost Reaver to leech energy shield because I'm mostly using energy shield as a defensive layer and don't have that much life. For life leech I just have the claw implicit. Then at this point I'm using the Lethal Pride to give me Rage on hit as well as Intimidate on hit. Further down I'm using the Green Dream to also benefit from the other mod, which gives me the Frenzy charges on kill from these two nodes. I'm using the Suppression Wheel, I'm using the Claw Wheel, one Mark Wheel for the gain Frenzy charge on hit against marked enemies for bosses and single target. I have another Mana Leech wheel for instantly getting my mana up to full. Cold Penetration, I'm using Blind on enemies. I have some tattoos as well. It's just a really nice extra defensive layer to get to 95% evade attacks. I'm using Large Cluster Jewel for some additional all resist and Cold Pen. And then I have 2 medium cluster jewels to get 2 additional pierce enemies with projectiles to make the clear a little bit easier. I'm also using, as I said, the Bloodsoaked Blade to be able to use my tincture to burn my life instead of my mana. So lastly, let's go over the PoE and as well as a short build summary, let's say. On the configuration, I'm having all these boxes ticked. Let's go over them. I'm using the power charges as well as endurance charges for my Ascendancy. I have frenzy charges from the mark on hit. I have phasing from my flask, fortified from my support gem on my Frostblades. I have 30 rage from the lethal pride rule. I'm always leeching. I have suppressed spell damage recently. This is really important for the Green Dream Jewel that I talked about. As you can see, it's a big damage increase if this is up. Then the enemy is blinded. I chilled the enemy because I'm doing a lot of cold damage. Effect of chill is mostly at around 30, even on the on big bosses. The small enemies are frozen. I'm also shocking for around about 10%, depends on the hit of course, because I have a little bit of lightning damage from my claws that are still added lightning instead of added cold. Then I'm intimidating on hit because again of the lethal pride rule. And then lastly, because the PoE can't track this really well, in the custom modifiers I have the heat shiver implicit from my vestigial helmet. Yeah, but most importantly, it's the Mana Storm buff. If I untap this one, my damage drops to 20 mil, and if I have this active, it's like 60 mil more damage. To be fair, let's untick some boxes that are maybe a little bit conditional, like for example, if you haven't suppressed spell damage recently, as well as if the Berserk buff isn't currently running, as well as maybe the Arcane Cloak isn't always up. It's because I have it on automation. I'm a little bit too lazy to also use this one because I already have a lot of buttons that I'm pressing. So let's take this one out. Damage is still pretty good in my opinion, especially for the weird stuff that I'm doing in this build. Effective hit pool isn't that great with 45,000 without the Arcane Cloak. But in my opinion, it feels a little bit better than PoE would suggest, because if you don't get one shot, which happens of course sometimes, especially on an evasion build, that then I'm pretty tanky, because I just leech that much that all the small hits just instantly get negated. My Chaos Max hit is a little bit better than it's maybe shown here because of the Ivory Tower body armor. The problem is when I triggered my Mana Storm shield and then I'm on 0 mana, I didn't leech in this second, and as in this second there's like a Chaos Ground dot or like a Chaos hit, then that's the most of the times that I'm dying is because of this. I could use the Forbidden Flame and Forbidden Flash for Searing Purity, but in my opinion, it isn't that necessary. Usually the gameplay feels okay without this jewel, but you could also do this and maybe get another jewel socket here and get rid of the rare jewel and fix all those things, but it's okay in my opinion. Then considering I'm using a mana stacker, or I'm trying to do a mana stacker, I don't have that much total mana, but it's enough to give me a good amount of added damage with the Mana Storm. I have a decent defensive layer with Mind Over Matter, and it also scales my energy shield in some ways. My life is really low, but that's intended. I'm also reserving a lot of it for the auras, and because of the low life pool, this way my tincture that is burning my life percentage wise, I can keep the buff up for a way longer time than if I had a lot of life that I would need to leech. Energy shield is 4,700, but most importantly I'm leeching 1,100 on hit. I have 30 rage from the Lethal Pride. I have the 95 evasion chance. This is a little bit conditional, let's say, because of the blind. Without the blind, I'm dropping to 92. It's still pretty good. But this one is a little bit conditional if you want. Armor, I don't really do anything with this. I have 100% spell suppression, which is important because especially of the jewel that I'm using. And lastly I have a little bit of chaos resistance and my normal elemental resistances. That's about it. Overall you could say this build is really good for clearing and mapping, of course. Frostblades is always a little bit worse against single target because you can't cleave. The projectiles that are shooting from the Frostblades don't work. You could use maybe a Nimbus instead of the Calandra's Touch, but I think the Calandra's Touch adds too much value because the Manifold Ring is just way too good with all the added mana, the energy shield, and the damage that it provides. So I would have, with a Nimbus, you would have like around 20 to 30% more damage because you can add the Icy Blades on top of it. But without the ring, all my other damage drops down, and especially my effective hit pool goes down. So I think this is a better way of doing it. And then the biggest problem of the build, of course, is when you're not able to leech, because when you're not able to leech, then your mana is at 0, and you can't leech the energy shield, and it doesn't regenerate on its own, other than the Ivory Tower regenerate. But yeah, I can't. I'm mostly using the Ghost Reaver node for the leech, for the energy shield. And yeah, every fight, especially some of the Ubers, are borderline impossible, even though I easily would have the damage to kill them. Maven, the Uber Elder, as well as especially Ceres, is basically impossible with this build, because it's really hard and it's really annoying to do. So I didn't clear those. I cleared all the other ones, because all the immunity phases and the phases where you can't hit anything, the build is just dead in the water. This is the biggest problem, but I think still, other than that, the build is really cool for the idea that I had with it. And the Mana Storm is a really cool shield that worked out really well, in my opinion. You could also do like other skills, especially in stacking together with mana stacking. It should be way better, but Frostblades has a lot of added effective damage. So yeah, this was really nice, and I wanted to do anything that freezes stuff, because I like the Herald of Ice explosions. And so yeah, I landed on Frostblades, but you could also do like especially all the wand attacks. The Kinetic Blast and so on would be really good with this shield, I think. Probably worse than if you're just doing the regular stacking of int and so on. But it's a nice idea, and I think the build worked out really well in the end. Yeah, that's about it. I hope you enjoyed the video, and see you next league.
Consumed by fear! You can win again.
The spheres!
This realm's infinite demands belong to us. Lightning's mass. This realm's infinite delights belong to us.